Guys, it's Friday and it's the last scene of Julius Caesar. This is it. This is the final scene. I'm going to talk about a few things, and I will first just kind of reiterate today is the last day of remote learning in terms of new work. So there is one final assignment over Act 5 posted on the website. This video will help you. All you have to do is complete that. Make sure you don't have any missing assignments, and you are smooth sailing, home free, done with English 2 and Julius Caesar. If you are looking back and you realize that you have some missing assignments, I will contact you, or you need to kind of look back. Skyward's updated. You'll see the P or the I, and you will know whether or not it's passing or incomplete. So quite a few of you have some assignments to do, so just make sure that you get those done. Next week is kind of that week to do that. So it's not like I have to have them today, but all of next week you'll be working on your missing assignments. So if you've stayed up on the coursework and you complete Act 5 today, you're done. If not, you can check in with me and let me know what you need, and I can help you with that. But you need to get your missing work assignments done so that those are passing and not incomplete, and that you can move on from English 2 with a passing grade, if you will. All right. Okay, so let's tackle scene 5. It's actually pretty short, and it's the final scene of the entire play. We've read it kind of together, if you will, and we're ready to discuss just a few things. Because it's short, there's not a whole lot happening. It all revolves around Brutus. If you look back at the rest of Act 5 has been the battle. It's been intense. It's been emotional. There's been lots of death, and just kind of the presence of Caesar has still been kind of lingering in the battlefield. So Cassius, he dies in the beginning part of Act 5, and if you haven't watched that video, my boys reenacted that scene, and it's, I don't know, kind of terrible, but it's all right. Hopefully it'll make you laugh, but they did their best. So Cassius actually dies kind of with misinformation. His death is kind of one that like really didn't need to happen, but you can tell going into battle, he had kind of already given up. He wasn't confident. He was just like overwhelmed with everything going on. And so because he thought, they had taken Titinius, he basically kills himself. And then Titinius feels responsible, so then he kills himself as well. Brutus realizes when he comes back and he finds their dead bodies that something has happened, and he of course has some feelings of responsibility for that death as well, because Brutus saw himself as the leader of this army, and Cassius, even though they've had some arguments and some, I don't know, just some troubling times in their friendship, he really was a dear friend to Brutus. And he has those very special words, "I will find time, Cassius, I will find time." And that is where he says, "I will, it's not right now because there's a battle and I need to get out of here so I don't die, but I will find time to properly grieve and mourn and pay tribute to your death." So that's all been happening. And so this final scene is basically like, who wins? Why do they win? We got to wrap some of this up. So Brutus basically, he regroups, but he feels very defeated. He knows that the end is in sight. He had mentioned to you guys in the play, to readers, that he would never commit suicide. He thought that as a cowardly act. But at this point, he realizes it's his only chance to kind of go out and die in a heroic sort of death. Remember, suicide with the stigma in society today is very different than what it was back then. This would have been seen as him kind of dying for his country, dying for his army, just being a heroic person as he goes out, taking responsibility for that. So he's regrouping, and he's asking a few of his soldiers to kill him. He's whispering in their ears, will you kill me? Will you kill me? Will you kill me? And they say no. And that's an interesting part. And they do that because they don't want to be responsible for Brutus's death. Like, this is their leader, their general. This is the man that they look up to, the one who's leading them, and they don't feel like that is what they should be doing to honor Brutus, and to have him go and be responsible for that is not something they wanted. He does end up finding someone to kill him, and just as we've mentioned in the past, so the same dagger that killed Caesar was the dagger that Cassius used. Since it was his dagger, he killed himself. Same thing with Brutus. He mentioned Caesar. They both do. They both kind of cover their face. There was a video clip that you watched of Caesar's death where he has a cloak and he's trying to cover his face as well. If we were in class, we would be talking about why do they do that, and is this a sign of like almost like hiding, kind of having people see them in this way, and just being maybe a little bit embarrassed, maybe some of those feelings as well. So, but in all of the deaths, so Caesar is talked about. The dagger that was used to kill Caesar is used on both Cassius and Brutus. So he's never really gone. Like, Caesar's presence is always there, and that's why the play is called the Tragedy of Julius Caesar as well. So he dies, and basically after that, it's just kind of final farewells. We get that like Antony and Octavius are obviously victorious. They do come across Brutus and some servants and recognize that Brutus is dead. And the ending is very interesting. So Antony genuinely praises the virtue and honor and nobility of Brutus, and he means that. Some people will think that it could be like an act, like we've seen him in this vengeful sort of way. But I think as the pressure and the stress and the emotion has been removed since he's victorious, it allows his true feelings to come out once again. He could be putting on a show and looking good in front of his soldiers so that, like, as he moves forward with the triumvirate and ruling, that people would see him in good graces and that he would maybe gain the honor and respect of people that supported Cassius and Brutus. Definitely a way to look at it and a way to interpret it. But no matter what, the play does show that Brutus is being honored here. Antony is honoring Brutus and all that he stood for and his nobility, and saying that he will have a proper burial and that he should be respected in that way. And so I think that's very, very important. Octavius gets the last lines of the play. I'm going to ask you about this in the Google form assignment for today. Octavius gets the last lines, not Antony. And I think this is a little bit interesting, and I'll leave it. There's not really a right or wrong answer. I mean, it's kind of opinionated, but think about who ends up ruling. If you do a little bit of research and kind of figure out what happens after this triumvirate has been formed between Antony, Octavius, and Lepidus, you'll probably get your answers. But why does Octavius get the last lines when there's been so much focus on Antony and his character, especially through Acts 4 and 5? Okay. So just a couple more highlighted points. So Brutus's death, we would talk about the symbolism and the importance of that. Some people think that this play is way more about Brutus than it is about Caesar. Both of them would be considered tragic heroes where they had a flaw, like arrogance with Caesar, the blinding of being kind of that tunnel vision of doing everything for the good of Rome, of Brutus, where it's basically that has led to his downfall, his death here in Act 5. He was determined to do the right thing, and he felt like his death was the last radical right thing that he could do. I'm trying to think. I don't know. I feel like there's so much to be said. It's hard that we weren't able to be together, in discussion whenever we were doing this. Some people will venture to say that Brutus was the true ruler and not Caesar. And there's just so many discussion points. I do ask you one question on your Google form. There's lots of ideas. We play this game where I put you in corners and I ask you a question and you have to move to the person that is it Brutus? Is it Cassius? Is it Antony? And one of the questions I would ask you is who died the most heroic death? Obviously Antony didn't die, but between Brutus and Cassius and Caesar, you could throw in Portia if you really want to, but in terms of maybe Titinius, Titinius, there in Act 5, or here in Act 5 as well. The final question of your your Google form assignment today is who died the most honorable death. You get to decide what it means to be honorable, and it's an opinion question. There's no right or wrong answer. I'm just hoping that you can kind of put some thought and effort into that, and that's about it. So that's kind of a wrap up. Scene 5 is really short. It just doesn't seem like it does it justice to have this video as our final discussion.